on the apologetic side of things, this idea of globalism, and again, all of this stuff really does matter to us as not only citizens of the United States, but also as a church is concerned. Because again, these do have some eschatological matters to it as well. So when we hear the term globalism or global, a globalist kind of a person, let's just deal with the ideology of it first. In our own country, there's a big deal right now, and again, because our president has coined the term "Make America Great Again," and we hear the term America First as far as policy is concerned, that's kind of like the total opposite of globalism. So in globalism, every decision is made with the consideration of everybody that's on the planet, 8 billion plus people. A globalist ideologically says we can't be so concerned about ourselves, we have to be concerned with all of humanity and all of mankind. So peace activists love to do this, and really your own view in a spiritual sense is really going to change maybe even how you view globalism versus nationalism and all the rest of those things, because you might think, if you're real new agey about these kind of things, we're all one people regardless of what our disagreements are and where we live in the world. We have to think globally. We can't think just nationally. And so it's that, world peace kind of stuff that we see, and it's driven so much policy, especially in the last 50 to 60 years. So it's where you find the people like at the United Nations that whenever there's a problem, they start to look for global solutions to even local problems, which means ultimately that's going to mean that the people who are having to deal with it won't be able to deal with it themselves or under their governments. They're looking for world solutions. And every time that that's been tried, gosh, talk about failure. If ever you want to look at a failure, you have a perfect example of it in the UN all day, every day. They're nothing but a failure for the last 70 years, almost 80 years. So ever since their development, they've been a useless assembly of people doing absolutely nothing of any value. So that's a very globalist mindset, but that's the ideology. For whatever the problem may be, the solution is a global response to such things. And the problem is that the globe, or the global view, is really ultimately, how do you worry about any individual when you're talking about a huge bunch of people that can't even agree on anything, really, of any substance? So that would be the ideology behind it. But then that finds its way into politics. And so in our country, if we have a president and an administration that's very globalist, then they start to try to work with other groups, and even our policy within a country is going to be reflected by that view. We don't worry necessarily about the things that we do. So when it comes to matters of trade and all the rest, we have to think about what's best for all of humanity rather than just us. And so policy is going to kind of dictate that. So it finds its way into every bit of policy in the way that we deal with immigration, the way that we deal with trade, the way that we deal with all the rest of that. Now, if you think this is political, hold on, because I'm not to the bottom line to this whole thing about globalism. But the ideology is what it is. Decisions need to be made for all people, and independent of what any particular nation might need. Forget about the needs of the few, but the needs of the many outweighs all of it. Okay? That's the globalist ideology. And whoever is in power in any particular country, if they have a very much a globalist view, they're not going to necessarily by default make a decision what's best for the people of their country, but what's best for the people of the world. That would be the ideology being put into practice, and policies will reflect that. So again, immigration, trade, monetary things, all of it is going to influence how you run a country and how that country is going to react with the world. If it's globalist, then the people living in the country are not really having representation that represents only them, but represents all of humanity. Now, why this matters to the church and why should we care about such things? Well, because I also believe that this is eschatological. I believe this is a matter that really will carry over into the future when the world as we know it kind of ceases to exist and God begins to deal with mankind more in the sense of judgment, book of Revelation kind of things, when God finally summarizes his dealings with man. We already know from the Old Testament that God will not always strive with man. So the day is going to come when God's going to require accountability. That day, the Bible talks about very, very specifically when God finally says, enough of this, I'm going to establish my kingdom. Well, everything's going to change at that point. And then all the discussions about globalism and nationalism and this, that, and the other thing, and all the isms aren't going to matter because they are going to be governed by God himself. He's going to see to it. So it is with that in mind that we want to be very, very careful when we start to talk about globalization and globalism. And are we a globalist or are we a nationalist? I'll deal with that on Thursday. And stop to realize that the world itself is moving in a very globalist sense. And when we think of it in the eschatology or the end times, think of, is there anybody who would be more in the globalist sense than the Antichrist himself? I believe that there will be a literal Antichrist, and he will have a platform and people around him and a mechanism, or whatever you want to call it, through which he will operate. So in that case, everything is going to be, it's being done for the welfare of mankind, because he does get to the point where it seems like people just give over to him. Revelation 13 is a great example of that. Then he will become a world dictator, but still very much globalist. Everybody's got to do for everyone else. Nobody will have any kind of self-determination, even down to the nations. They will all be answerable to something way greater than themselves. That's really globalization. So globalization, the globalist or globalism, is that there's no nations. It's really, we're all one. And that really is the push. That's the push of the New Agers. That's the push of so many in our world today. And really, a sad thing is it's the bait and switch, because their point is, we want to take care of all your needs, but we will be in control. So it's like, wait a minute, this isn't as good as it sounds like, maybe as a bumper sticker, when you start to find out what the internals are. That's where the eschatology becomes interesting, because the day is going to come where people are going to say, what did we do? What have we given over as far as our own control over our own lives? That day is coming. So it's just kind of interesting when you stop to consider that. So when we think of the terms globalism, we watch these things and the real movement towards these things. There's an ideology. It's more important to be concerned about all of humanity rather than just our country. It will reflect in the policy of any particular country. In ours, we have a representative democracy, and people love to say, well, not really. And, there's all the changes. We're not like we used to be. Yeah, still, we're not a monarchy, and we are not a theocracy. Think Iran. Think places where if you don't do as the ruling class tells you, they'll put you to death for the ideology. So we're not like those places. We still have a voice. We still have freedoms different than most other places on the planet. As much as it's been eroded over time, still we're different than most. So anyway, however it is and wherever you may live in this world, still the bottom line is the movement is towards globalism, and that makes it easy for any small group of people to control in ways that we have never imagined before. The Antichrist in that system will be the ultimate in what is going to be sold to the people as globalism, but it's going to be a dictatorship. That's what the scriptures end up telling us. So when we hear all of this discussion, let's understand the terms. Let's understand the operations of it, and let's understand what it looks like to the believer as we hear these things said. What does it mean when we compare those things up to the Bible for our days in which we live and the days future? That's going to be very helpful. So we'll take a look at nationalism next and how those things start to play out when we look at the world of other ideologies when it comes to religious ideologies and globalism and nationalism and all of those things. So we'll tie these things together. We'll be doing a few of these things. And as we put them out there, I hope to have the dialogue with everyone and getting a chance to kind of work through the finer points of this. If you have questions, contact me. The ministry's website is oldpaththeology.net. And I look forward to hearing from you. Or if you want to know about the Israel trip or any other things, you know how to get a hold of me through that email at the website. Again, oldpaththeology.net. Contact us and you can send me an email. I'd love to hear from you.